So I wanted to make this video for quite a while since there's always been a few things I found a little strange about Yu-Gi-Oh players and, their deck building mentality, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. The video that I uploaded this morning on the new Mitsurugi support really opened my eyes to what I'd say most players in this game struggle with. I mean, obviously there's a few things I identified over the years, but I'll go over the most blatant ones and I'll try to use as many examples as I possibly can to illustrate what I'm trying to say. So when I reviewed the new Mitsurugi cards, I basically said that other than the new level 4 and the ritual monster, which by the way are completely broken, the other cards were pretty terrible, and yes, I definitely stand by that. As a matter of fact, I typically deem any card that is strictly inferior to an already existing option to be quite mediocre unless you're forced to play it. My mentality is that a bad option is not an option, since I can just play a better card instead or just play a different deck. But some people have a tendency to view bad options as, still options to consider, which is cool if you're trying to have fun, you can play whatever deck you want. But for the sake of actually trying to improve and deck build competitively, this is not the best mentality to have. Usually I'd say I'm extremely lenient with newer card releases since I'm not sure which build will be the most optimal to play, so I try to give each card the benefit of the doubt. This time, however, it's not going to be the case since for Mitsurugi, this is going to be the second wave of support, and most importantly, we already know which version of the deck has the most success. Whether Mitsurugi was played as a pure deck or with Ogdoadics or with aliens, it didn't change the fact that these builds were far less successful than the Razul version of the deck. Now about the new cards, honestly most of them just don't really need to be played, so yeah, they're kind of dead content to me and to a lot of players as well. Mitsurugi Mirror has an objectively worse effect than Mitsurugi Ritual, like almost all the time, because Mitsurugi Ritual is so insanely overpowered that I preferably want to use both of its effects before I use any other ritual spell instead. Therefore, for Mitsurugi Mirror to be worth playing, I'd have to ritual summon twice with Mitsurugi Ritual and then use Mitsurugi Mirror. And unless you've been living under a rock, you would know that Mitsurugi is not a deck that plays a lot of ritual monsters, and as a matter of fact, people have even been cutting Futsu as of lately. Heck, even Great Purification is no longer standard than the main deck because for the most part, it's just to win more. As players get more experience with their deck, they tend to simplify them by minimizing the amount of bricks and by maximizing starters and non-engine space. And this has been the winning formula for top-tier competitive decks for years now, by the way. But yeah, in other words, Mitsurugi Mirror doesn't seem to fulfill any need for the Mitsurugi engine, so why play it? Oh, because of pre-prep, right? Alright, sure, let's address this. Since Mitsurugi Mirror mentions all three rituals, you could use pre-preparation of rites to search Mirror alongside any of the ritual monsters. And of course, since the new Mitsurugi ritual monster is a one-card starter, that would turn pre-prep into a one-card starter. So does that make Mirror good only because pre-prep now is good? Well, I wish deck building was this simple, but it's not. So pre-prep, although it is a one-card starter and it is not too bad in theory, it is also filled with flaws, and I'll state them one by one. The first flaw is that it relies on you having Mirror in your deck to be live, which turns Mirror into an actual Garnet. The second flaw is that it exacerbates the already existing flaw of the deck, which is Droll and Logbird. Because yeah, sure, you can lose to Droll pretty much regardless of how you play it out, but when you play a search card that searches another search card, usually that's kind of worse to get drolled on. You usually want to get drolled after getting your most important search first, and preferably want to have as many cards that can still do something through droll, such as the Razul monsters for example. Yeah, they're not super great if you're already under droll, but unlike pre-preparation of rites, at least they're utilizable. The third and most obvious flaw is that the fact that pre-preparation of rites in the Razul Mitsurugi deck has diminishing return value. Yes, consistency is very important, but there are good and bad kinds of consistency cards. The good consistency cards are cards such as Bonfire, which can search either your Ice Razul, which is a power normal summon that is extremely good for your deck, or search something like X Razul, which is a board breaker, and all that without any real commitment. Now, the bad consistency cards are cards like Anubis the Last Judge and Seventh Ascension, which only serves the purpose of searching another card that also searches another card. The same way Anubis and Ascension are bad, you could say that Man with a Mark and Seven Tachyon are way better since they are inherently resilient to Droll and Logbird. You could even be in a bottleneck situation where all of your starters all lead to the same starting play, and if that starting play gets interrupted, then you basically have nothing. Because the worst feeling ever is having 5 cards in hand and 5 starters, but realistically losing to 1 hand trap. And the thing is, even without pre-preparation of rites in the Mirror package, you can still just play multiple Habakiri. Or you could search it out with Aramasa, King of the Feral Imps, Prayers, or whatever when you do need it. And when you really think about it, Mitsurugi doesn't really suffer from a consistency issue and didn't really before. It actually suffered from a Droll, Dweller, and incoherent hands issue. Dweller is no longer relevant, so that's cool. Pre-prep is actually worse into Droll than simply drawing Habakiri itself, and I doubt Mirror is the kind of card you always want to see in your hand since Ritual is much better. It's painful to admit this, but adding more options to your deck doesn't always make your deck better at what it does. For example, the Nadir Servant package introduces several new options into the deck as well as extra consistency, but it wasn't too popular in the deck before. The awkward timing for the card, where you basically have to use it at the very end of your combo, was annoying for some people, and for others it was the fact that you had to play Maximus or just all the extra redundancy. The pre-prep package with Mitsurugi Mirror also feels very similar, as if your hand is already good, these cards virtually add no real push. And honestly, it's easy to have your code of starters if you understand ratios and deck building very well. Don't play too many normal summons, and also if your deck loses to Drool, try to stay away from search cards that search cards. Now, I've also seen some people hype up Mitsurugi Tempest, which I think is quite hilarious, because in my video I acknowledge this card's effect as being pretty broken, but then again, that doesn't make the card good. Yes, a lot of cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Can be simultaneously good and bad at the same time, because context always matters. For example, the Tyrant Neptune is a terrible card that absolutely nobody would play if it were to get unbanned, but its degenerate application with cards such as, let's say, Independent Nightingale made him get banned. Honestly, you can kind of use the same argument for practically every single card on the ban list, which further proves my point that two things can be true at once. Mitsurugi Tempest on paper appears to be an insta-win card, but realistically, if you can fulfill the activation requirement and the cost for this card, you kinda just won anyways. If you even get to go first, and then set up 3 ritual monsters on your field and search a trap card, all of that without getting hand shopped, you were 100% winning this game regardless. Do you really think that it's Mitsurugi Tempest that's gonna make the difference between winning and losing when clearly you had everything going in your favor? Because again, if you get to ritual summon all these 3 monsters, you could have done different things instead, such as, I don't know, full Razor combo and then make like 10 disruptions. Something that people just have to understand is that every decision you make in this game has a hidden opportunity cost. You think you're doing something productive when you're turboing out all the 3 ritual monsters and then searching Tempest, and you think you're making your deck better when playing pre-prep and mirror, but guess what? You are losing another option in doing so. You're introducing win mores into your deck, such as, you know, playing Futsu and then playing a trap card and then playing mirror, and you're doing things your deck just shouldn't be doing in a long tournament. You think you're winning games by playing the trap cards, but think of all the games you lost because you drew the trap card going second instead of a hand shop. You think that playing more Mitsurugi spells and traps makes your deck more resourceful, but think of all the games where you didn't care about them and all you needed was prayers and ritual. You've probably heard this a million times in your life, and I'll keep saying it, but less is more, especially in Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck building in Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't typically reward you for finding the most convoluted, over-the-top strategy. You typically get rewarded for finding clean, consistent, reliable, and strategically well-thought out decks and ratios. You don't necessarily have to think outside of the box to achieve success in this game whatsoever. If you overcook your food, it ends up being burnt and inedible, just like too much overthinking in Yu-Gi-Oh! Can make you consider cards that aren't necessary. Again, I want to make it very clear that this video was made by using Mitsurugi Razor as a reference because of the fact that it already exists and that is the most popular version and most competitive version of the deck as of lately. If you want to play a, I guess, worse, quote-unquote, or riskier version of the deck, go for it. I'm usually not the kind of person to dismiss new support, which is why this caveat is really important. Oh, and I'm not even gonna bother going over Wusu, Magatama, and Sacred Boundary. These cards are absolutely abysmal, and unless you're intentionally trying to play a worse deck, do not play them. But yeah, I think at this point the message that I'm trying to convey is pretty clear regardless of where you stand here. If you want to become a better deck builder in Yu-Gi-Oh!, consider a minimalistic approach. And yeah, definitely try to avoid playing like 20 one-ofs. Make sure that you maximize your starters, your non-engine, and minimize your bricks. And also consider the quality of your starters because this is also very important. Consistency is very important, but redundancy is something that can play against you. Because again, 7th Ascension, even though it is a starter, it is a worse quality starter than 7th Tachyon, etc. You get the point. Anyways, that's all I had for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.